Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Owen Bailey never thought a casual comment could destroy everything he believed was unshakable. At 35, an English literature professor at the University of Washington in Seattle, Owen always saw himself as a rational, analytical man, someone who could spot nuances others missed. That skill made him a respected teacher, admired by students for how he broke down classic novels and uncovered hidden layers of meaning. But on that Thursday afternoon, as he came home earlier than usual, all that analytical power turned inward, revealing a truth he'd been too blind, or too confident, to see. The day had started like any other. Owen woke at 6, made coffee, reviewed his notes for the afternoon class on Virginia Woolf, and left the house before 7:30. Claire, his wife of 6 years, was still asleep. Her hospital shift didn't start until 10, so she usually slept in. They had a routine, almost choreographed by repetition. He left early, she woke up later, they met for dinner, talked about their days, watched something on TV, and went to sleep. Nothing extraordinary, but Owen always believed stability was a kind of happiness. Claire was a nurse at Harborview Medical Center, dedicated, capable, always talking about long shifts and difficult patients. Owen admired her calling, the way she handled other people's suffering without losing her compassion. But over the past 3 months, Claire had added something new to their routine. She began mentioning her Aunt Margaret more and more, her mother's older sister, who lived alone in an old house in Ballard. According to Claire, Margaret had mobility issues after a fall and needed help with chores, grocery shopping, and doctor's appointments. Claire said she visited her 2 or 3 times a week, usually on afternoons when she didn't have a shift. Owen never questioned it. After all, taking care of family was noble, and he had warm memories of Margaret, a kind woman who always welcomed them with homemade cookies and warm tea during the rare times they visited together. But that Thursday, everything changed. Owen was on campus, preparing for his 2 o'clock lecture, when he got a message from the administration. The history professor who shared the auditorium with him had called in sick, and the joint class was cancelled. Owen had the rest of the day off. He thought about staying on campus to catch up on grading, but decided to go home instead. Maybe he could make a special dinner for Claire, surprise her. He grabbed his car and drove back to the condo where they lived, a modern 12-story building in Capitol Hill with a partial view of Puget Sound. It was almost 3 when Owen parked in the underground garage and took the elevator up. In the lobby, he ran into Dennis, the doorman who'd worked there since they moved in 4 years ago. Dennis was a man in his 50s, always friendly, the kind who remembered everyone's name and greeted them with a genuine smile. When he saw Owen, he waved enthusiastically. "Hey, Professor. Home early today?" "Class got cancelled," Owen replied, smiling. "Thought I'd enjoy the afternoon at home." Dennis nodded, then, in that casual tone people use when making an offhand observation, dropped the phrase that would shatter Owen's world: "Your wife left with that bearded guy again today. He must be family, right? Always comes for her on the same days." Owen froze in the middle of the lobby. His smile locked in place. He felt his blood turn to ice. "What guy?" Dennis, sensing something off in Owen's tone, hesitated. "Oh, you know, the tall guy, dark beard, always in a black SUV. I figured he was a cousin or brother. They show up together 2 or 3 times a week." Owen forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Oh, yeah. Of course." He thanked Dennis and headed for the elevator, but his mind was racing, his heart pounding unevenly. What bearded guy? Claire had never mentioned anyone helping with her aunt. She always said she went alone. Always. And now Dennis was saying she left with someone regularly. On the same days? Owen stepped into the apartment and locked the door behind him. The silence, usually comforting, now felt suffocating. He dropped his bag on the sofa and stood in the middle of the room, trying to make sense of it all. Maybe Dennis was mixing Claire up with another resident. Maybe the bearded guy was really some distant cousin Claire hadn't thought to mention. But why wouldn't she mention him? And why did Dennis say, again? That implied frequency, a pattern. Owen pulled out his phone and opened the GPS tracking app for their car. He and Claire shared a Honda Accord, and years ago, for safety, they'd installed a basic tracking system, more for theft protection than anything else. Owen had never used it invasively, he'd never felt the need. But now, his hands trembling slightly, he pulled up the route history for the last 3 months. What he saw on the screen made him sink heavily onto the sofa. Claire's car had never gone to Ballard, where her aunt lived. Instead, there were dozens of records, 2 or 3 times a week, always to the same address in Bellevue, across Lake Washington. A quiet, upper-middle-class neighborhood Owen had no connection to. He zoomed in on the map, saw the exact location, a quiet street lined with well-kept lawns. Why was Claire going there repeatedly? And always at the same times, between 2 and 6 p.m., on the days she claimed she was caring for her aunt? Owen felt a wave of nausea. He picked up the landline and, with shaking fingers, dialed Margaret's number. Each ring felt like an eternity. Finally, an old, cheerful voice answered. "Hello? Aunt Margaret? It's Owen. Are you doing okay?" "Owen. What a surprise." "I'm fine, dear. How long has it been? How are things?" Owen closed his eyes. "Have you needed help around the house lately?" A pause. "Help? No, dear. I'm doing all right." "Why? Has Claire been coming by to help you?" Another pause, longer this time. "Claire? No, dear. I haven't seen Claire in months. Since last Christmas, I think. Is she okay? Did something happen?" Owen felt the ground vanish beneath his feet. He mumbled an excuse, said Claire must have mentioned visiting and he'd misunderstood, wished her well, and hung up. He sat on the sofa, holding the phone, staring into nothing. Claire had lied. Not once, but repeatedly, for months. She wasn't caring for any aunt. She was going to Bellevue. With a bearded man. Always on the same days. Anger came first, a hot, suffocating wave rising from his chest to his throat. Then came humiliation, the feeling of having been made a fool, of having trusted blindly while being systematically betrayed, planned and deliberate. And beneath it all, a deep, crushing sadness that threatened to swallow him whole. 6 years of marriage. 6 years of partnership, plans, "I love you" whispered before sleep. All a lie. Or at least part of it. Owen wasn't the type to hesitate. He grabbed his laptop, searched Private Investigator Seattle, and found a company with good reviews. He called immediately. A professional-sounding woman answered and transferred him to an investigator named Marcus Hale. Owen explained the situation plainly, without flinching. He suspected his wife was having an affair, had the address where she went regularly, and needed proof. Marcus listened in silence, then said calmly, "I'll need 4 business days to gather solid evidence. Photos, video, identification of the person involved. I can start today, but the full report won't be ready until next Tuesday." 4 days. Owen took a deep breath. It felt like an eternity, but he knew acting rashly would be a mistake. "Fine. Go ahead." Marcus asked for details about Claire, physical description, car model, likely times, and promised to keep Owen updated. They agreed on payment, and the call ended. Owen hung up and stared at his phone, feeling hollow. Now it was just waiting. 4 days. 4 days to confirm what, deep down, he already knew was true. That night, Claire came home at 7, as usual. She carried that tired but satisfied smile of someone who'd spent the afternoon doing something meaningful. She kissed Owen on the cheek, dropped her bag on the sofa, and headed straight for the bedroom to change. How was it with your Aunt Margaret? Owen asked, keeping his voice steady. Oh, she was fine today. We did some cleaning, talked a bit. She loved the cookies I brought. Claire spoke naturally, without hesitation. Owen watched every micro-expression, every movement. She lied with disturbing ease. That's good, he said, turning away to fiddle with something in the kitchen so she wouldn't see the tension on his face. The next 4 days were the longest of Owen's life. He went to work, taught classes, graded papers, chatted with colleagues, all on autopilot. At night, he ate dinner with Claire, talked about trivial things, pretended everything was normal. But inside, he burned. Every time she said, "I'm visiting my aunt tomorrow," he felt a sharp pang of anger and sorrow. She kept lying, day after day, with no visible remorse. On the following Tuesday, precisely at 2 p.m., Owen received an email from Marcus Hale. Subject: Complete report, Claire Bailey. Owen was in his campus office between classes. He locked the door, sat at his desk, and opened the email with sweaty hands. There were several attachments, photos, short videos, a 3-page written report. He opened the first photo. His breath left his lungs. It was Claire, stepping out of the Honda Accord in front of a house in Bellevue. Beside her, a tall man with a neatly trimmed dark beard, wearing a paramedic uniform. They were laughing, her hand resting familiarly on his arm. There was a sequence of photos, them entering the house together, the door closing. Timestamps showed they stayed inside for hours, 3, 4 hours, before leaving. In some photos, they came out wearing different clothes than when they went in. In one short video, just a few seconds long, you could see them inside the car before getting out, him leaning in to kiss her. Claire returned the kiss, her hand on his neck. Owen felt a physical pain in his chest, like someone had shoved a knife in and twisted. He opened the written report. Marcus had done thorough work. The man was Austin Driscoll, 32, a paramedic at the same Harborview Medical Center where Claire worked. Single, lived alone in the Bellevue house. According to social media research, he and Claire had been Facebook friends for about a year, but their public interactions were minimal, clearly trying to stay discreet. The report included screenshots Marcus had obtained through methods Owen preferred not to question, messages between Claire and Austin, arranging meetings, exchanging affectionate declarations, planning their next meeting when Owen's teaching. Owen closed the laptop and rested his head in his hands. He wanted to scream, to punch the wall, to cry. But he did none of those things. Instead, he took a deep breath, locked his emotions away somewhere deep inside, and began planning. He wouldn't confront Claire yet. Not now, not until he was completely ready. He opened his browser and searched for divorce lawyers in Seattle. He found a firm with a strong reputation, scheduled a consultation for the next day. Then he copied all the files Marcus sent onto a flash drive and to the cloud. Evidence. He needed it securely stored. The next morning, Owen skipped his first class and went to the lawyer's office, a middle-aged man named Richard Kellerman, serious and direct. Owen showed him everything, the photos, the videos, the report. Richard reviewed the material in silence, took notes, then explained, Washington was a no-fault divorce state, so infidelity wouldn't legally affect asset division. But the evidence could be useful elsewhere, especially if there was a dispute over alimony or if Owen wanted to ensure the process moved quickly and without resistance. Richard advised Owen to gather financial documents, organize details about the condo, which was in both their names, and be ready to act swiftly once he confronted Claire. Owen left the office with a clear plan. It was time. That afternoon, Owen came home early again, this time on purpose. Claire's shift ended at 6, so he'd have the apartment to himself for a few hours. He grabbed the flash drive, plugged it into the living room laptop, and left the photos open on the screen. Then he sat on the sofa and waited. At 6:30, he heard the key turn in the lock. Claire walked in, tired, with that automatic smile she always brought home from work. "Hi, honey. You got home early." She stopped mid-sentence when she saw Owen's expression. He was sitting on the sofa, arms crossed, the laptop open on the coffee table. She looked at the screen and went pale instantly. The photos were there, one after another, undeniable proof. "Sit down," Owen said, his voice cold and calm, so calm it scared even him. Claire stood frozen for a moment, as if considering running. But slowly, she walked over to the armchair and sat, her hands shaking, eyes locked on the images on the screen. "Owen, Shut up," he interrupted, voice low but sharp. "Just shut up and listen." Claire closed her mouth, tears filling her eyes. Owen leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes fixed on her. "For 3 months, you left this house and went to Bellevue to sleep with Austin. For 3 months, you came home, looked me in the eye, and lied. You said you were taking care of your Aunt Margaret. I called her. She hasn't seen you since Christmas." Tears began streaming down Claire's face. "Owen, please, let me explain." "Explain?" Owen let out a humorless laugh. "Explain what? That you're screwing a paramedic in his house while I'm teaching? That you made up a fake illness for your aunt just to have an alibi? That you lied to my face every single day? I didn't plan this," Claire sobbed. "It just happened. We worked together, we started talking, I felt lonely." "Lonely?" Owen stood up, the anger finally breaking loose. "You felt lonely? Then why didn't you talk to me? Why didn't you say, 'Owen, I'm unhappy, we need to change something'? But no, you chose to lie. You chose to betray me. You chose to make a fool out of me." Claire stood too, reaching out her hands to him. "I love you, Owen. I love you, it was just a mistake." 3 months isn't a mistake, Claire." Owen pushed her hands away. 3 months is a choice. You chose this. You chose him. You chose to lie. Please, we can try again, I'll end it with him, I swear." Owen shook his head, eyes red but dry. "No. It's over. I've already spoken to a lawyer. You'll get the divorce papers next week." Claire dropped to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. "Owen, don't do this, please, I'll change, I want you out of here by tomorrow," Owen said, picking up his bag. "I'll stay at a hotel tonight. When I come back tomorrow, you're already gone. Take your things. The condo stays with me, the down payment was all mine, you remember." "Owen." He was at the door. He paused, turned back one last time. "Oh, and just so you know, your Aunt Margaret lives at Harborview now? Because the doorman said you leave here straight to meet Austin." Claire's eyes widened, but Owen was already out, slamming the door behind him. In the days that followed, Owen acted with surgical precision. He didn't react on impulse or blind rage, but with cold, clear intelligence. First, he sent copies of the evidence, photos, report, everything, to Human Resources at Harborview Medical Center, along with a formal letter explaining that 2 employees, Claire Bailey and Austin Driscoll, were involved in an extramarital relationship that violated internal conduct policies, especially given they worked in the same department and that the relationship could compromise the workplace environment. HR took the complaint seriously. Within a week, Austin Driscoll received a formal warning and was reassigned to a different shift, isolated from Claire. The humiliation was public within the hospital. Owen also didn't hide the truth from anyone. He told his close friends, his family, even some of Claire's co-workers he knew. Not with drama, not with desperation, just facts. "Claire cheated on me for 3 months with a co-worker. We're divorcing." Simple, direct, true. Claire's reputation, especially among the social circles they shared, collapsed. Mutual friends picked sides, and most of them sided with Owen. Claire tried to win Owen back for weeks. Calls, texts, emails begging for a second chance, swearing Austin was out of her life, that she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. Owen blocked her number. He responded only through his lawyer. The divorce moved quickly, no children, no major shared assets, just dividing a few belongings and selling the condo, whose value was split, though Owen kept the larger share, since he'd paid the full down payment. Less than 6 months later, the marriage was officially over. Austin Driscoll vanished completely from Claire's life as soon as the scandal broke. He didn't want any more trouble, didn't want to be publicly tied to the case. Claire tried contacting him, but he blocked her. The great love that supposedly justified the affair evaporated at the first sign of real consequences. A year later, Owen was living in Tacoma, an hour south of Seattle. He'd accepted a tenured teaching position at a smaller university, one with a more welcoming environment and fewer painful memories. He rebuilt his social circle, started therapy to process the betrayal, took up running again, a habit he'd abandoned during his marriage. And, surprisingly, he began dating Emma, a librarian he met at a literary event. Nothing serious yet, but there was lightness there, a possibility of a fresh start Owen hadn't imagined possible just months before. Claire, on the other hand, stayed in Seattle, but her life was unrecognizable. She kept her job at Harborview, but the atmosphere was hostile, co-workers avoided her, gossip circulated. She lost most of her friends, especially the close ones who considered the betrayal unforgivable. Her relationship with her own family became strained once the truth came out. She tried to start over, went on a few dates, but carried the weight of guilt and a ruined reputation. Austin never showed up again, and Claire realized, far too late, that she'd destroyed something real for a fleeting illusion. Owen learned lessons he never imagined he'd need to learn. He learned that trust, once broken so deeply and deliberately, cannot be rebuilt, no matter how many apologies or promises are made. He learned that acting with intelligence, calmness, and dignity, even at the peak of pain, is the most powerful form of revenge. And he learned, above all, that starting over, though terrifying and painful, isn't just possible, it's necessary. He didn't carry hatred for Claire, just a distant sadness, like mourning the end of something that was once good but had become too corrupted to save. One night, while dining with Emma at a seaside restaurant in Tacoma, Owen looked out the window and saw his reflection in the glass. He was smiling. A real smile, light, free of the weight he'd carried for so long. And in that moment, he knew he'd crossed to the other side. The betrayal no longer defined him. He was just Owen Bailey, professor, voracious reader, a man who had loved, lost, suffered, and finally found himself again. Life went on. And Owen, against all expectations, was doing just fine. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.